Very good.
All right, and it'll also be recorded so you can access it later on. I post all of our classes on YouTube.
Great.
All right, so what I'm going to be doing is I'm actually going to be looking over the COR magazine and riffing on it because it has a very good outline of what the how you prepare your kitchen for Pesach. At the same time, also it gives me an opportunity to actually disagree with many of the points, and you can see where I take a position that is other than what the COR magazine has to say. So in order to start, um, we have to talk about the obligation to to kasher or to make your utensils kosher for Pesach. And in order for them to be made kosher for Passover, we have a general rule. It's a rule of thumb that we refer to in Hebrew as kabolo kach polto, which essentially means the way that something was absorbed is the way that you can expunge it. The idea is that the way or the mechanism, the kind of heat that's used and the material or the medium through which the chametz is introduced into the utensil will affect how you kosher it. At the same time, also, not all materials are kosherable. There are certain kinds of materials that you can kosher because running it through the process, at least according to our understanding, will ensure that whatever was absorbed is extracted. But there are certain materials that are so porous or for one reason or another, you can't kosher them. So these items cannot be used for Pesach. Now, if you were to take a look at the COR magazine, you'd see a list of kosherable materials: granite, marble, metal, stone, and wood. On the other hand, however, it gives you a list of things that cannot be koshered for one of the aforementioned reasons. So, for example, china, corel, corian, cork, enamel coating, formica, melmac, nylon, plastic, porcelain, Pyrex, synthetic rubber, and Teflon coating. Now, when it comes to actually koshering things, while you will find that most kosher agencies, when they give you Pesach instructions, are rather stringent when it comes to hard plastics. I'm not as stringent when it comes to hard plastics, and we know for a fact that, for example, the COR and other agencies do in fact kosher hard plastics. Soft plastics, no, but hard plastics, yes. And this will come up when we start talking about koshering countertops. According to the COR magazine, for example, for mica, an engineered stone, plastic countertops cannot be koshered. I personally am of the opinion that they can be koshered, and we do routinely kosher these things. Um, so we'll get into the specifics shortly. We'll get into the specifics soon. Um, Now, one of the things that makes that will ensure that that really asks that begs the question: can an item be koshered or not? Is whether or not it can survive the koshering process. If something is cannot survive the koshering process, it obviously can't be koshered. And even should an individual put it through the koshering process, the assumption is that you didn't do it well enough because you were afraid of breaking it. So where does this come up? This comes up when it comes to things like softer plastics. So, for example, soft plastic, if you're going to put it into a pot of boiling water, if you leave it there too long, it might get, it can get warped, it can get bent, it can no longer be functional, and as a result, we don't kosher soft plastic, but a hard plastic that can survive the boiling process, you can perform hagola on. But not all materials can survive all forms of koshering. So, what are the five forms of koshering that we're going to discuss? Well, we have the five levels of koshering that we refer to, and we'll go through them, step by step. The first one is called libun gamur. Libun gamur is greater incineration. Now, this is the kind, each kind of koshering is performed for different kinds of utensils, depending on whether or not whether or not it was directly, on the receiving end of a source of heat, and the material of the medium through which the chametz was absorbed. So libun gomer is considered to be the most severe and most stringent. It's considered the most hardcore form of kashering, and it's the greater incineration. This is when we take a metal, like a stovetop or a pot or something of the sort, and we apply heat directly to it, like in the form of an industrial blowtorch or putting it in coals until it becomes red hot. This is considered to be the best form of kashering, but it's also the most difficult form of kashering. What is the kind of kashering that requires libun gomer? Well, something that is exposed to the source of heat and also has the chametz prepared inside it that is not in a liquid medium. So, for example, a roasting pan, a a barbecue grill, something a cake pan, a bun pan. Those are the sorts of things that, because there isn't a liquid medium, you have the food or whatever the chametz is it's cooking directly in contact with the metal. There's no liquid there, and it's exposed to a direct source of heat. It's in the oven. According to most authorities, running an oven through a self-cleaning cycle constitutes a form of libun gomer. It's about 1100 degrees Fahrenheit or so, between 1100 and 1300 degrees Fahrenheit. It's considered to be a form of incineration that covers absolutely everything. Now, there is another form of libun, that's called the greater incineration. There's lesser incineration. This is a method that's used for items that do not come in direct contact with food. So, for example, the grates in your stove, and the sides of your stove, and things of that sort, things that are not going to come in direct contact with your food. That is where the lesser incineration will come into effect. What exactly is lesser incineration? Well, it's where you have an item that's been heated up to the point where if you exposed a feather or straw to it, the straw or the feather would begin to burn. Um, One way you can tell if libun kal, or this lesser incineration, has been accomplished is if you sprinkle water on it, it'll immediately sublimate and just sort of, evaporate right away. That's considered to be lesser incineration, or libun kal. And this is something that we use. Not you obviously it's not good enough for the baking pan, but it's definitely good enough for other kinds of pots and things like that. And we'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. Now, that the third form of kashering is what we refer to as hagola, which is boiling. This is for a pot or pan or any other kind of utensil that came in contact with food through a liquid medium, or alternatively, food. And it's a utensil that came in contact with food that was hot, but it's not exposed to the source of heat. So, what are some examples of this? Well, in terms of an item that has chametz, it's exposed to the heat, and the chametz is exposed through a liquid medium. That would be like a pot. It would be like a saucepan. It would be like your soup pot, and it would also be your fork and your knife, the sorts of things that you use to cut your food. The food is hot. But and even if there isn't a liquid medium there, because it's not exposed to the source of heat, it's considered to be a form of cooking, and therefore hagola is required. Now, what exactly is hagola? Hagola is boiling. How do you do this? It's a little bit complicated. Essentially, what you do is you have to clean the item thoroughly. You have to remove all the dirt, you have to remove all the labels, you have to remove all the glue, you have to remove all the dust, you have to remove everything. There should be nothing on the surface of the utensil that you are going to be koshering. Um, the item should not be used for 24 hours. The item should not be used for 24 hours. Let's talk about a pot, for example. How do you kosher a pot? Well, this is essentially what you do. You take a pot, You let it, you have to make sure that it's immaculate. You have to make sure that it's absolutely clean. You have to fill it with water, and then you have to put it on the stove to the point where the water begins to, achieves a roaring boil. Now, if you're going to kosher the pot itself, the water has to go over the lip as well. And the way to ensure that the water is a roaring boil as it goes over the lip is either to fill it really, really high, or alternatively, take a stone or something of the sort, stick it in the oven, heat it up until it's really, really hot. And then once the water is at a roaring boil, you use your oven mitts and you put the stone into the pot so that the water will go over the sides. And because the stone has been heated, it will not cool the water down. It will maintain the roaring boil. What you do immediately thereafter is you take the pot and you spill out the water, you spill out the stone, and then you run it under cold water right away. This now, once you have this pot, now that it's been koshered, it's kosher for Pesach, then you can start throwing other things into this pot now and kosher your servingware. You can kosher your cutlery. You can kosher any number of things. Each item the water has to be a roaring boil. It has to be boiling at a very high to a very high degree, and each utensil has to be put in one at a time. And you also have to make sure that the water makes contact with every part of the utensil. So that would mean, for example, that if you're using tongs to hold your fork in the water, you should have two tongs. One to hold on so that you can loosen the other and then hold tight with the original one and loosen that one. Thereby, you get all the hot water on the entire surface of the fork, of the spoon, of the knife, of the um, yes,
Is it like twiddling?
it does not have to be done at the same time. That is a major difference. I was going to get to that, but thank you for asking. Yeah, no, it's a good question. When it comes to koshering, it's different than toiveling. Toiveling, you have to put the entire thing into the mikvah all at once. When it comes to koshering, you don't. If you have a giant pot and you only can fit half of it into your koshering pot at a time, you do half it. You do half. So it doesn't have to be in contact with the hot water over the entirety of the surface of it right away. And again, just as with the pot, each item that you kosher has to be removed from the hot water as soon as you're done, and you run it under cold water right away. If the water becomes murky or if it becomes colored, then you have to change the water. The water has to be clear. Um, Now, let's say you've used this pot, and now you've koshered this pot for Pesach, and then you've koshered your forks, your kiddush cups, your whatever it is that you're going to be washing, whatever you're going to be koshering in it. You have to kosher it again, or at least that's the minhag. You have to kosher it again in order to make it kosher for Pesach once more. But again, you no longer have to wait 24 hours before you kosher it now. That's fine. You can just kosher it as it is. And that's what we refer to as Hagala. So what have we covered so far? We've had Libun Gomra, which is the greater incineration where the metal gets red hot. It's a self-cleaning cycle, and that's for food that comes in direct contact with, or with pots and pans that come in direct contact with chametz. But it's not through a liquid medium. Then we have Libun Kal, which is for the things that do not come in direct contact with the food. And then we have Hagala, which is the boiling. One other thing that has to be mentioned. Let's imagine for a moment that you're working with a pair of scissors and you want to kosher your scissors for Pesach. Because of how the scissors are constructed, there are parts that you just can't clean where the two blades make contact with each other. You can't clean that very well. So if there's food stuff stuck in there, you really can't kosher it. So that's where libun kal comes into play here again, which is the lesser incineration. What you do is you hold a match or you hold a lighter to the point where the scissors, the two blades meet, and you burn whatever's on the inside. The metal's not getting red hot, but you're destroying the stuff that's on the surface, and that's all you need to do. It destroys it, and you will no longer have an issue. And therefore, you have to do that before you kosher it with Hagala. You have to perform the libun kal, which is putting the flame but where the two blades meet. Now, the fourth method of koshering is iroi roiskin, which is where you are pouring hot water. Now, this is for items that have chametz poured on them. These are things like countertops or like sinks. You pour hot water on them. And it's similar to Hagala in that A, it has to be completely clean. It has to be immaculately clean. B, it cannot have been used for the previous 24 hours. And then C, you pour the hot water over it. This is a bit of advice that I once received. I've used it once or twice. It works. It's a good idea. You go to Canadian Tire or any other hardware store and you buy a metal flower watering pot. You cut off the disperser at the end, so that is just a just now it's just a metal pipe. You put it on the stovetop, you let it boil, and then you can pour it on the counter and on the sink very, very easily because again, this water has to be at a roaring boil. A what the a kettle can sometimes be problematic because a kettle does not necessarily achieve a roaring boil because they're often programmed to turn off as soon as you hit 100 degrees. You don't get a roaring boil in that case. So either you have to hold it down or you use a pot on a stove where you just have to you have to be very careful because you're going to be pouring a lot of water because the water has to be poured directly on the countertop. The stream of water has to make contact with the entirety of the counter and the entirety of the sink, which means requires a lot of water. Or you can get this flower watering pot from Canadian Tire. If it's metal, it often can survive being put on the stove, and that's one way to do it. Now, I have to also just make a comment about clearing about counters and sinks. Um, you'll often find described in the literature the practice of using an iron along with this water so that you heat it up, as well as, or alternatively, to putting a stone in the oven and rubbing that on the counters with the hot water. Don't do that. You can damage yourself, you can damage your utensils, and it's not necessary. So don't do that. You'll often find that recommended. Don't do that. I don't recommend it. So anyway, so therefore we've covered four methods of kashering. We have libun gomer, which is the turning metal red hot. We have libun kal, which is the lesser incineration, which you do for items that do not require libun gomer, but for one reason or another you cannot perform hagala on. We have hagala, which is the boiling of the water. We have the ira roskim, where you're pouring water on items that are not exposed to a source of heat, yet still have hot chametz exposed to them. Now we have the fifth method of kashering, which is called miloi ve'iroi, which is filling up and spilling. Now this is for utensils that do not come in contact with hot chametz ever. So these would be things like drinking glasses and things of that sort. In general, it's not recommended that you use this method. But what exactly is this method? You fill a bathtub, you fill a basin up full of water. You fill it up so that the water covers your glass. You let it sit there for 24 hours. You spill out the water. Then you fill it up again. You let it sit for another 24 hours. You spill out the water, and then you fill it up again for a third set of 24 hours for a total of 72 hours. Every 24 hours, replacing the waters. Now, this is not necessarily something that's recommended that you do. It is always recommended that you have a separate set of Pesach glasses. This is just one of those things that you do if you don't have a plan B. This is what they recommend. One of the things I've noticed that there are different cultures. In North America, we have a lot of storage space, or definitely much more storage space than we had in London, for example, London, England, not your London. Um, and people would do a lot more koshering. People would kosher their pots, people would kosher their kiddush cups, they would kosher everything, and they would kosher their glasses because people were very short on space. They didn't have a lot. They had to ration their space the way we have to ration our time. We have more space in North America, so therefore it's not as pressing an issue. It's definitely always recommended that you have a separate set of Pesach glasses, of Pesach dishes, so on and so forth. All right, so let's start talking about specific examples of how you clean specific items within your kitchen. Ovens. Let's talk about ovens. Let's talk about self-cleaning ovens. Classic self-cleaning ovens are the best, at least as far as koshering goes. What do? You have to clean all parts of the oven where the heat of the self-cleaning cycle does not reach, mainly the edges, the sides, the doors, and under the gasket. You have to run the self-cleaning cycle for at least 2 hours. And generally speaking, once you've run the self-cleaning cycle, Bob's your uncle, you're peachy keen, you can put food directly on the racks. Now, the COR magazine says you cannot. That's because the COR magazine is erring on the side of caution and not considering the self-cleaning cycle to be libun gomer. That's not necessarily the consensus opinion. I would tell you that the self-cleaning cycle is considered to be libun gomer and food can be placed directly on the racks. I wouldn't worry about it. Now, that being said, that's only talking about old-fashioned self-cleaning cycles where things get super, super hot. Continuous cleaning ovens and eco-clean ovens, they're not self-cleaning in that same way, and running their self-cleaning cycle is not considered to be a form of kashering. So what do you do with them, as well as just regular conventional ovens? What do you do with regards to them? Well, what you have to do is you have to clean them really, really well. And not only that, but it's probably advisable that you use a caustic cleaner. The idea is that should there be any food residue or anything that's residual that's left over, you want to make sure that it's no longer edible in order to remove the title of being chametz present. So you want to clean it. You want to get it as immaculate as you can. You want to use a caustic cleaner. Yeah, there'll probably be some stains and some other things in it, and that's fine as long as you've got it as clean as you could, and then use the caustic. You turn the oven to its highest setting and you leave it there for about an hour. It's also a good idea then to turn on the broiler for about half an hour. In general, though, once you've done this, you cannot put food directly on the oven racks. You can put pots and pans on the racks, but you cannot put food directly on the racks. Now, regarding microwave ovens, in general, it's not a good idea to kosher a microwave oven because they're actually really, really hard to clean properly. But if you find yourself in a situation where you need to kosher a microwave oven, the best thing to do, what you do is you would clean it. You have to clean it as best you can, the tops, the backs, the bottoms. You have to try and use get some kind of like a toothpick or some kind of a blade into the crevices so that you're able to get out the food that could still be there. You have to leave it there for 24 hours, not having used it, and then you put a utensil. You put some kind of a cup, a mug, or something of the sort, something that can survive a high temperature. You put it in with water, and then you run it at a high temp. You run for a long period of time until that the entire inside fills with steam. The glass tray on the bottom should not be used. You should cover it up with some kind of wax paper or some kind of parchment paper, something so that you don't put food directly on it or put utensils directly on it because you can't really clean that glass terribly well. I'm sorry, you can't kosher it at all. So therefore, the best thing to do is to either get a separate glass plate for the inside of your microwave or just cover it over with some parchment paper so that nothing comes in direct contact with it. Now, in terms of the stove top, what you do for a stove top is that you clean the entire surface of the stove top, all of its parts. Mainly the electric burners, the chrome rings, the gas grates, the dip trays, and the knobs. You turn the burners onto their highest temperature and let them sit there for 10 minutes. Now, I don't recommend that you do all the burners at once because if you turn on all the burners at once, they don't necessarily get as hot as they would if each one was turned on independently. So you turn on each one at a time, and then you let it sit on at the highest temperature for 10 minutes. Now, the chrome rings, the rings that go around them, those things should be put into a pot of boiling water. You should treat them like hagala. Alternatively, what you can do is you can take a pot, a wide pot, fill it with water so that the pot doesn't burn, and turn on the burners after you've koshered the burners to their highest temperature so that the heat will now expand and now get the chrome rings as well. The drip pans, if at all possible, should be put into the oven when you kosher it, either for the self-cleaning cycle or for the conventional oven, just the Liebman Ka. You want to get them as kosher as you can. If you're worried that they will not survive, which is definitely a possibility, you can actually buy aluminum drip pan covers and just use those for Pesach on top of the drip pans. The knobs should be super cleaned, but that's about as all you need to do. The surface of the stove, and we're not talking about a glass top, and we'll talk about a glass top shortly. The entire surface should be covered with aluminum foil, but make sure that you do not cover over any vents. The backsplash, you just have to clean it. You don't worry about it. Otherwise, you don't cook food on it. It's nothing to be terribly concerned about. And the hood of the oven, you don't have to be terribly worried about, but you probably want to clean it anyways because those things get gross and we don't clean them generally anyways. So, except on Pesach. So it's a good thing just to clean. So that's not a halachic thing. This is Mother Andrew's housekeeping from your rabbi. Now a glass top range. Each burner should be turned on one at a time for 10 minutes to their highest temperature. Now, you have a problem. That is, you cannot cover over the glass top. The glass top, if you cover it over, will shatter. You can buy special silicone covers, and maybe that's something to use for Pesach. But in general, you don't have to have one. But the thing is, you cannot put a pot directly onto the glass in between the burners. So you have two problems. One is that many people have the practice of just taking a pot and putting it down in the middle of their stove. So just get like a trivet or something that you can keep there, like yeah, that you can keep like a silicone trivet. That you could just put your pot down there, so you don't have to necessarily put it directly on the glass. Now, in terms of pots that are wider than the burner, which you can sometimes have, especially if you have a large family, you're going to be cooking a lot. That can I wouldn't worry excessively about it. But if you want, and this is what I personally do, is you can buy little wire separators that hold the pot just slightly off the glass. Now, definitely, it does not cook as efficiently. It doesn't get as hot because the pot is not directly in contact with the glass, but it holds the pot slightly off so that if the pot is larger than the burner, the pot is not making contact with with the glass. That has not been koshered. Go ahead.
But are you talking about the ovens that have glass and the heaters underneath?
That's right.
Okay,
Yeah. Those are called glass tops. Right.
glass tops. Yeah.
Right. Those are those are a pain. We used to have one. We went to a used appliance store and bought like a very old stove that has an old-fashioned self-cleaning cycle. That's what we have right now.
Okay.
And and it has old-fashioned, curling heating elements and an enamel top.
Yeah.
Okay, now dishwashers. A regular enamel interior dishwasher cannot be koshered, and therefore it's not recommended that you kosher it for Pesach. A metal one can be koshered, but it can be also a little bit difficult, especially when you have to deal with racks. So if you want to kosher your metal lined, your stainless steel dishwasher, talk to me and I'll walk you through it. I'll talk you through it. But most people don't have one. They're usually in industrial settings. So I'm happy to talk you through it, but we'll just skip it for now. Go ahead.
Can you use the dishwasher cycle to use it for the boiling water for the Kashering #3?
You cannot, because the water in your boiler is not a roaring boil.
It's true. It's true. So yeah, not the plastic. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So,
Okay, now sinks. A stainless steel sink. You have to clean every part of it thoroughly, the basin, the knobs, the faucet, the drain area. You also have to be sure to clean the spout on the faucet. You should also remove the faucet aerator, clean it well, because that's a little part that comes out that has the little filter-like thing, because that gets food residue and stuff in there. You want to clean that out. You don't let use it for 24 hours. Perhaps if there are any crevices that you can't clean, you maybe pour a cleanser. Use a cleanser that will make the food no longer edible. The sink has to be completely dry, and then you pour hot water over the entire surface of the sink, as well as the faucet. The handles you don't have to kosher, but they should be very, very clean. And some people will even take a pot of boiling water and pick it up to the nozzle of the faucet to kosher that point over there. It's not necessary, but it's something you can do. Now, the stoppers and the strainers, these should be replaced for Pesach. If necessary, they can be cleaned very well and then koshered in boiling water in that pot. Um, but it's definitely better to replace them for Pesach. Now, your instant hot water device, you pour boiling hot water over it while letting the hot water run from it. And your soap dispenser, you just have to clean it really, really well. Some people will cover the entire area of the sink after koshering it or put an insert in the sink. Now, and I'll tell you why I personally do this is I do this myself. I have found, and I've koshered many kitchens and I've koshered my own kitchen, that I have never been able to get the sink to the level of immaculate cleanliness if you run your fingers down at you that you feel nothing, that I feel completely comfortable saying that I've adequately koshered it. So what we'll do is we'll put just little liners down on the bottom, so that anything that we put into the sink is not coming in direct contact with the sink. And when we wash dishes, we'll use dish basins. We don't fill up the sink with water. Um, and I do that for the reason that I've often found that it's actually very difficult to get the sink as clean as you need it to be in order for it to be properly koshered. And the same thing when we get to countertops. It's similar for countertops. Now, sinks that are made of enamel, porcelain, or corian, these sinks cannot be koshered. So in that case, what you do is you clean them as best you can. You put a liner on the bottom, and you use just wash basins instead of using the sink itself. Countertops. According to most agencies, these are the things that can definitely be koshered: granite, marble, metal, stainless steel, and wood. Many agencies say that formica and plastic cannot be koshered, as well as engineered stone. I am of the opinion that you can kosher these things. You kosher them the way you do a metal countertop, which is you let them sit for 24 hours without having been used with anything hot. They have to have been cleaned thoroughly beforehand, like they have to be immaculate. And then you take that boiling water, you have to pour the boiling water. It has to be a roaring boil, and the stream of water has to make contact with the entire surface of the counter. Some people will use an iron, some people use a heavy stone, will use a stone from the oven. I don't do that. I don't recommend that people do it. But at the same token, I also found that it's because it's very difficult to get the countertops to the level of cleanliness and with nothing there to the degree that I feel comfortable saying that they've been adequately koshered. Will just, as a matter of course, after having koshered them, just cover them with aluminum foil, a layer or two. Now, what I'm saying in terms of koshering, engineered quartz, that's because I'm of the opinion that you can kosher hard plastics, but that's not entirely a universally held opinion, and as a result, you'll find that many people have many different opinions about this. And if you have any questions, you're perfectly you feel free to ask me anything. Refrigerators and freezers. You should clean every surface and all parts thoroughly using a cleanser that will make the food items no longer edible. Often the shelves will have to be removed in order to be effectively cleaned so that you can get into all the cracks, nookies, and crevices. And some have the practice of covering over, like you putting down some contact paper or something of the sort on the shelves that come in direct contact with food. I don't worry about that, especially I don't worry about that. The same thing with regards to freezers. Now, cupboards, drawers, and shelves, these should be cleaned thoroughly with a cleanser that will render all the food no longer edible. So, and again, it's also some have the practice of putting something down on the surfaces that come in direct contact with food. When it comes to tables, you really can't kosher your table without destroying it. So therefore, you should clean it very, very well, obviously, as well as you can. But then you should get something like a thick plastic, some kind of a nylon, double layer it so that no liquid can eat, so that spills, no liquid will penetrate it. It should be, you should have probably have two plastic tablecloths or something of the sort, not the disposable kind, the reusable kind, something with nylon. Flatware like forks, knives, spoons, those sorts of things have to be require Hagolah. They have to be put into the pot of boiling water. In terms of tablecloths, dish towels, those you just put into the washing machine. High chairs, you can never properly clean a high chair. Um, you do the best you can, and you put contact paper down on the tray, but also be recognize that you probably should not be eating the food off of the high chair on Pesach. It's probably you can never adequately clean anything that children come in contact with. Candlesticks and like your light there, the tray that goes onto it. You don't have to kasher that. You don't have to clean. You just have to clean it well. And then when you clean it on Pesach, you should probably do it in the washroom. Don't do it in the don't do it in the kitchen. The following items cannot be kashered. A blech, unless you're going to put it through libun gummer, which is putting it through a self-cleaning cycle, which will probably destroy it. Bottles with narrow necks because you can't get inside and clean it adequately. Things that are made of ceramic, which also includes china. Something that has small little crevices that you cannot clean properly, like a coriander, a sieve, or a strainer. A crock pot is another example of something that's made of ceramic. I would not recommend koshering a food processor for Pesach because it's difficult to get into all the little spaces that you have to in order to properly clean it. A grater, a mixer, plastic tablecloths, a sifter, toaster ovens, a warming drawer, and a wooden cutting board also probably should not be used. You should probably get a special one for Pesach. Um, any questions, comments, or rebuttals? I'm hearing music. You're hearing music. Oh, it's somebody in the kitchen. Oh, it's Rabbi plugged in the kitchen. All right. Now let's talk a little bit about some products. Um, some products don't necessarily require Pesach certification. So I'd like to know, for example, I've been asked a few questions or so far about medicines. Anything that your doctor recommends does not need to be kosher for Pesach. Anything your doctor says you have to take, whether it be a vitamin, whether it be a supplement, whether it be a pill. Pills are not food. Pills are not something that you eat. That you take them because the doctor tells you that you must take them. Therefore, there's no issue taking them on Pesach, even if they have chametz. However, that's only for vitamins and supplements that a doctor recommends. Like if a woman is taking a multivitamin because of osteoporosis, that's fine. You're doing what the doctor tells you to do. But if you're just like me and you want to take ashwagandha because it makes you feel better about yourself and life in general, well, that's not necessarily a medicine at that point. It becomes considered more like a food, and because the doctor didn't tell you that you have to take it to meet a medical need, and as a result, for example, so I'm not going to take my melatonin, I'm not going to take my magnesium, things that the doctor did not tell me to take. I'm not going to take those on Pesach unless I can get a chametz certified variety. And there are, if you go online, if you want to talk to me about what it is that you need to take, I might be able to track some down for you. Um, Toothpaste. There are many people who say that toothpaste has to be kosher Pesach, and you can find some that are some listed in some of the kosher some of the magazines. I would tell you nobody eats toothpaste. I don't think you have to worry about toothpaste being kosher Pesach. I don't know the last time anyone ever ate. I mean, kids. Okay, but are they eating the toothpaste that you use, or are they using the kids' toothpaste? That's different. Kids' toothpaste is different. But in general, I wouldn't worry so much about toothpaste, soaps, shampoos. When it gets a little bit more complicated when it comes to things like deodorant. And the only recommendation I can make is that if you're going to use a deodorant, you should don't if you get the I'm not what do you call the
Stick.
the stick? Yes, the stick. If you use a stick, you don't have to worry about it. That's not edible. Nobody's going to eat that. That's not an issue. If you use a spray, also not a problem. But if you're like me, because I'll put deodorant on Shabbos, so therefore I'll have the old-fashioned one with the little ball on the top and the liquid, because it has denatured alcohol in it, and denatured alcohol can, or denatured alcohol rather, denatured alcohol can be converted back into an edible product.
That makes roll-on deodorant edible.
It makes it called chametz nuksha,
Okay, yeah.
and which means that, so therefore, because we're also considered now, because my son is here, I'm going to get into some halachic terminology. You never, the smicha kashtia on Yom Kippur. Smicha kashtia. So therefore, applying it to yourself is considered like consuming it. So therefore, many people have the practice of just ensuring that the roll-on deodorant that they use, the non-stick roll-on deodorant, doesn't have any denatured alcohol. Benzyl alcohol, cetyl alcohol, isopropyl alcohol, menthol, and sterile alcohol are all fine. Um, many mouthwashes are also fine, are also acceptable and I have a very, very complete list that I've available. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask me. And no, I'm open to questions, comments, rebuttals. But the everything that I wanted to cover in terms of the class has been discussed. And please feel free to ask anything.
Incredible. Thank you for your time.
Good. Yeah.
So what about inhalers, like inhalers that you have used on a regular basis and now is Pesach? And like what are you doing with them?
You're not eating them.
Right, but you're in contact like with your
That's-
mouth or with your.
That's fine. You're not eating it. The issue is about the consumption. It's about actual like putting something in your mouth, chewing and swallowing. Right. You also put something up your nose. You're also put bread up your nose. Yeah, it's also not an issue. It's also not a problem.
Is anyone passing that electric cigarettes didn't need a cultural Pesach actually?
No, I don't. I'm not going to engage with that one, Shlomo, but thank you for your interest.
Okay.
Or, Renee, did you have a question?
Yes, it's a toivel question.
Okay.
You can toivel in natural bodies of water, right?
That's right.
Okay, I have an ocean in front of me. But it's very wavy. And my question was if I could put my stuff that I'm toiveling, which is really just two pots and a lid, in a pillowcase. Does that count?
No, you can't toivel inside of a utensil. You can't. I would not recommend using a pillowcase. But not a pillowcase, but you can like, yeah, do you have like those bags the laundry bag, the laundry bags that have,
Basket, yes. Okay, I could do that.
yeah. All right. Anything else?
No, but this was a great class.
All right. Well, I'm always available. Call me for any reason at any time, and I will do my utmost to help you in a timely manner.
Okay.
And
Okay, Chag Kasher v'Sameach.
Kosher v'sameach, everyone. Stay well, Amy. Bye bye.
Bye. See you.